You're watching WAFB's streaming newscast, live and local, with Dion Guillory. This is 9 News at 5:30.
We start streaming tonight at 5:30 with the latest into Jerome Powell, the Justice Department, launching an investigation into the chairman of the Federal Reserve. It comes after months of pressure from President Trump, but the move is prompting resistance from within his very own party. WFB Washington correspondent John Decker kicks us off tonight.
For months, President Trump has publicly berated Fed Chairman Jerome Powell for being too slow in terms of lowering interest rates. Now the Department of Justice is launching a criminal investigation into Powell, and he's fighting back. Federal prosecutors are investigating Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell over his Senate testimony last summer about the Fed's building renovation costs. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
The president's made it quite clear is Jerome Powell is bad at his job. As for whether or not Jerome Powell is a criminal, that's an answer the Department of Justice is going to have to find out.
Powell received a subpoena on Friday, and on Sunday he released a video in which he called the DOJ's investigation a pretext aimed at pressuring the Fed to lower interest rates.
This is about whether the Fed will be able to continue to set interest rates based on evidence and economic conditions, or whether instead monetary policy will be directed by political pressure or intimidation.
In a break with the president, several Republican senators criticized the DOJ probe, including Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski, who wrote on X that the administration's investigation is nothing more than an attempt at coercion. And North Carolina Senator Tom Tillis, a member of the Senate Banking Committee, said in a statement that he will oppose the confirmation of any nominee for the Fed, including the upcoming Fed chair vacancy, until this legal matter is fully resolved. As for Powell, whose term ends in May, he made it clear that he's not resigning from his position anytime soon.
Public service sometimes requires standing firm in the face of threats. I will continue to do the job the Senate confirmed me to do, with integrity and a commitment to serving the American people.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer was also critical of the DOJ investigation, calling it an assault on the Fed's independence that threatens the strength and stability of the U.S. economy. At the White House, I'm John Decker.
John, thank you. The Justice Department charging a man tonight shot by federal officers in Portland, Oregon last week for, quote, violently striking a Border Patrol agent's vehicle. The DOJ releasing these images of a damaged Border Patrol vehicle tied to the shooting that happened during a traffic stop on Thursday. Prosecutors say Luis Nino Monchada repeatedly struck a federal law enforcement vehicle with his car. He is facing a charge of aggravated assault of a federal officer with a deadly or dangerous weapon. The DOJ says he admitted to intentionally ramming the Border Patrol vehicle in an attempt to get away. A Department of Homeland Security spokesperson says there have been more than 2,000 immigration arrests in Minnesota in the last month. Nicole Skanga shows us since the death of Renee Good last week, the presence of ICE is especially enraging members of that community.
Off the street.
DHS is sending more federal agents to Minneapolis, adding to the roughly 2,400 already in the Twin Cities.
There'll be hundreds more, and in order to allow our ICE and our Border Patrol individuals that are working in Minneapolis to do so safely.
Immigration raids continued over the weekend and were met with furious protesters.
This does not help anybody. It's going to continue to escalate.
Federal agents were seen tackling bystanders and deploying pepper balls and tear gas. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bavino.
It didn't look like de-escalation, but are you trying to send a message?
The agitators and the rioters here in Minneapolis need to understand that our operations will continue unabated despite the violence they perpetrate against law enforcement.
On Monday, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz visited the growing memorial set up where Renee Good was fatally shot last week.
That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you.
President Trump says ICE agent Jonathan Ross was acting in self-defense when he shot and killed Good.
The woman was very violent. She's a very radical person. Very sad what happened.
Around the country, hundreds of anti-ICE demonstrations demanded accountability.
This could have been us. This could have been our street, our neighborhood.
With tensions so high in Minneapolis, public schools are offering remote learning for the next month for children who might feel unsafe venturing out. Nicole Skanga, CBS News, Minneapolis.
Developing tonight, President Trump says he is weighing potential military options against Iran as the government there tries to stop demonstrations. Days of nationwide protests have led to a violent crackdown. Tens of thousands of people continue to take the streets with daily demonstrations in Iran. An independent human rights group says government forces have killed hundreds of protesters and arrested more than 10,000. Iran's exiled crown prince has been calling for Iranians to rise up against the Islamic government and for the U.S. to help free that country. Breaking tonight, the FBI says the suspect in a synagogue fire in Jackson, Mississippi, admitted to targeting the institution because of its Jewish ties. Stephen Pittman was charged with maliciously damaging or destroying a building by means of fire or an explosive. An affidavit filed in federal court today reveals Pittman's father urged him to return home shortly before Pittman allegedly set the Beth Israel congregation building on fire. No congregants or firefighters were hurt. Security camera footage released by the synagogue showed a masked and hooded person using a gas can to pour a liquid on the floor and a couch in the building's lobby.
Jackson is standing with this community, so attack against the synagogue is an attack against all of us.
This is not the first time the 160-year-old synagogue has been targeted. The temple was bombed by KKK members in 1967. An investigation is still ongoing tonight. A man accused in the deaths of his ex-wife and her husband made his first court appearance today before a judge in Illinois. Michael McKee was arrested over the weekend in the city of Rockford, that's about 85 miles northwest of Chicago. He's charged with 2 counts of murder in connection with the deaths of Spencer and Monique Tepe, hundreds of miles away in Columbus, Ohio. Days before the arrest, police released footage of a person of interest seen walking near the victim's home around the time the dentist and his wife were killed. According to court records, McKee is Monique's former husband. Today, his public defender said he waived his right to an extradition hearing.
I will assert his right to remain silent. And Mr. McKee believes that the most expeditious manner in which he may defend himself against the charges pending in Ohio and to plead not guilty would be to waive his right to an extradition hearing and to have a governor's warrant and to agree to his immediate transportation to Ohio.
Meanwhile, the judge set another status hearing for next Monday afternoon. Police say they found the couple dead with apparent gunshot wounds during a welfare check. The couple's 2 young children were discovered alive and unharmed, and officials said there were no signs of forced entry. 3 bullet casings were also recovered at that scene. 3 of New York City's largest hospital systems could face new staffing shortages tonight. That's after almost 15,000 private sector nurses went on strike. They cite concerns over staffing, benefits, and safety. The nurses also want a pay raise, but at least 2 of the hospital systems say the amount they're demanding isn't feasible. Governor Kathy Hochul signed an executive order declaring a disaster emergency. It supplements staffing to try to maintain patient care. From the court to the court, Supreme Court justices will hear a landmark case tomorrow that deals with transgender athletes. It has the potential to rewrite the rules around who's allowed to play which sports. West Virginia Attorney General John McCuskey is advocating for a law that would prohibit trans girls from participating in female sports. The issue has drawn widespread attention, with President Donald Trump signing an executive order last February to pull funding from schools that don't comply. A decision is expected by June. The Supreme Court heard arguments today in a case that could be pivotal both for coastline communities here in Louisiana and oil companies. WFB Washington correspondent Setson Miller explains.
Before the High Court Monday, justices heard arguments from local communities in Louisiana who sued oil companies for damaging their coast. But the key question before the justices doesn't have to do with the lawsuits themselves, but rather where they should be argued. Before the Supreme Court Monday, Chevron squared off against Louisiana coastal communities over a case centering on alleged damage to wetlands along the Gulf Coast. It came before the justices after a state jury ruled that the oil company must pay $745 million for wetlands restoration in Plaquemines Parish, just south of New Orleans. But Chevron wants the case moved to federal court instead, which is typically friendlier for big oil. The company argued that because they had federal contracts to produce aviation fuel in Louisiana back in World War II, that their case belongs in federal court.
These companies then, as they have for decades, continue to lean in to be part of the energy security and national security of this country. And so I think these cases should be in federal court.
But the state and local communities say the case is best left in Louisiana state courts.
These are pure questions of state law, and the state has an interest in having its courts and ultimately its Supreme Court, who is the ultimate decision maker about the interpretation and application of state law.
Some of the justices questioned Chevron's arguments and openly asked how far the oil companies could go if they rule in their favor.
It's hard to see where you stop. I mean, is it a butterfly effect? You know, the butterfly flaps its wings and it has the end result halfway around the world.
If we define it as capaciously as you do, I'm not sure what the stopping point would be or how we would limit the application of this case.
The case may have implications for other lawsuits against oil companies for environmental damage. In Washington, I'm Stetson Miller.
The U.S. Postal Service is honoring legendary martial artist Bruce Lee tonight. A new forever stamp will feature Lee, who has inspired generations to explore the worlds of mixed martial arts, action movies, and Asian culture. The stamp features Lee executing his famous flying kick. The Postal Service is planning a first day of issue event for the Bruce Lee Forever Stamp on February 18th in Seattle. The man known simply as the greatest is being honored with 2 stamps. The stamps featuring boxing icon Muhammad Ali will debut on Thursday. Ali once said he should be on a postage stamp because, quote, "that's the only way I'll ever get licked." Never thought I'd say that. Ali was a 3-time heavyweight boxing champion, but he also used his fame to advocate for peace and humanitarian issues. In 2005, he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the nation's highest civilian honor. He died in 2016 at the age of 74 following a lengthy battle with Parkinson's disease. Back here in Baton Rouge, the mayor's office is launching a new program to honor local veterans, but they need your help. The mayor's office says you can nominate veterans and include personal stories highlighting their military service. Those stories will be featured on social media, and once a quarter, veterans will be formally honored by the Metro Council. You can send an email to the Office of Veterans Affairs to submit your photos and stories. You still have time to reel in some prizes through Breck's Rainbow Trout Fishing Competition. Thousands of rainbow trout have been released in 5 Breck ponds across the parish. There are parks in Central, Zachary, and Baton Rouge. You can fish from sunrise to sunset for a chance to win some exciting prizes. Each park has at least 5 tagged fish, which can be redeemed for a prize. The competition runs through next Monday. Remember, a Louisiana fishing license is required for prize winners.